discipline isn't about torturing yourself. It's about directing yourself. It's about choosing where your time, energy, and your attention go instead of letting the world choose you. Welcome to the Property Mindset Podcast, the place where we work on the most valuable asset you'll ever invest in, and that is your mind. I'm Emma Howitt, mentor investor, and your guide to building wealth, freedom, and personal transformation through property. Today, we are talking about something that can feel kind of really heavy, quite serious, and that is discipline. But I really want to come at it from a different angle. So not the discipline that we might think about as punishment or try harder, be tougher. Discipline as self-respect, discipline as caring about your future self, discipline as a quiet, almost boring friend that builds everything that you say you want. So whether you're just starting on your property journey or you're already investing and trying to juggle work, family, deals, this episode is about making discipline feel lighter, kinder, and more sustainable. So let's turn dreams into actions and actions into success. So first of all, we're going to start by looking at discipline without self-punishment. So, when most of us hear the word discipline, we kind of think about being told off at school or being shouted at in the gym class, or, we might even be hard on ourselves, when we fail, quote unquote. So it's kind of no wonder that this sort of discipline word feels really heavy, but that's not the type of discipline that I want to talk about. And I want to start with this idea from author Ryan Holiday in his book, Discipline is Destiny. And it says, discipline isn't about torturing yourself. It's about directing yourself. It's about choosing where your time, energy, and your attention go instead of letting the world choose you. So it's pretty powerful there. There's another quote from psychologist Rick Hanson, who talks about discipline as doing good and then learning to feel good when you do good. So inherently, you're not whipping yourself into shape. You're just reinforcing the feeling of pride and peace that comes every time you follow through. So in this episode, when I talk about discipline, I really don't want you to be thinking that you're sort of shouting at yourself, you're almost hustling yourself into burnout. What I really mean when we're talking about discipline is keeping the small promises to yourself, showing up when you said you would, and being kind but firm with your future self. So of course, we're going to connect that to property, because the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And if you build healthy discipline in your life, it's going to show up in your investing as well. So let's look at motivation versus discipline. So motivation is noisy. It's that rush that you get when you listen to a powerful piece of music, a YouTube video, or you come out of a property event, or you listen to a podcast like this and you think, right, that's it. I'm changing everything. And of course, motivation is great. It's really great for getting started, but motivation is also fickle. It comes and goes with your moods, with your hormones, how you slept, what your boss said to you, what the agent said to you that day. And if your whole property journey relies on motivation, it's really going to feel like a roller coaster. And I think we've all felt that kind of roller coaster feeling. So discipline is much quieter. It's that bit of you that says, I don't feel like this, but I promised I would. And then goes and does the thing anyway in a gentle but firm way. So there's a famous line from Jocko Willink, Willink, and it says discipline equals freedom. I mean, that is a huge statement. So people sometimes mishear that discipline equals suffering. um, so when you're disciplined today, you give you give your future self more freedom. So obviously freedom of choice, freedom of time, and a big one, freedom from panic. So let's think about some sort of simple property examples. So the motivated binge watches property videos for 3 hours on Sunday, takes loads of notes, but then does nothing. Whereas the disciplined you spends maybe 20 minutes to an hour every Sunday analyzing 3 deals and logging them in your spreadsheet, and diarising, speaking to agents and whatever else you need to follow up. So 6 months later, who's more likely to own more property? It's just not going to be that person who had the motivated Sunday, but it's that person who quietly, consistently shows up for that 20 minutes to an hour. So one of the shifts I'd like to invite you into is stop chasing motivation and start building gentle discipline. So, how does that work? So, tiny discipline is small wins, but big impact. And I think, the thing about discipline is that there's this kind of massive myth that it has to be big, it has to be heroic. And you see people, going on, I'm doing, 75 hard and I've never got off the couch before. These are big heroic things. And, this is tough. So it's also, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. every day, and you normally roll out of bed at 9. I'm going to spend 3 hours every night on property. I'm going to stop watching TV completely. And of course, these huge changes, don't last very long. And then what happens is you tend to feel like a failure. We feel like we can't do it. We're useless. We can't do this. So disciplined people aren't necessarily doing dramatic things. They're actually just doing small things consistently. Mark Manson, who writes a lot about self-discipline, says real change is more about boring consistency than epic feats of endurance. And that's really what we're aiming for. I'm going to read that again because it's powerful. Real change is more about boring consistency than epic feats of endurance. So let's now think about those tiny disciplines in 3 areas. So let's say time. So you could incorporate, one small non-negotiable block of time each week that belongs to a part of your property journey. So it might be, 30 minutes on a Wednesday evening, an hour on Sunday morning. Or if you're still working, it might be your commute. So in that time, you are able to do one thing that moves you forward. So whether it's deal analyzing, some learning, messaging an agent, reviewing your finances, planning what networking events you're going to attend, all of those kind of things. And the key is not the length, it's the consistency. So now let's look at money. So perhaps one tiny discipline with your money, it could be setting up a standing order of even just £50 a month to start having that saving pot, that future deposit pot. It might be a monthly money date where you check your spending, your buffers, making sure that you're not you haven't got subscriptions that you don't use anymore. You might use a rule that you always check the real cash flow of your property before you get excited about it. Really looking at what are the expenses, what are the unexpected that have come out. Because I think every pound you direct with intention is a signal to yourself, I'm the kind of person who looks after my future. How about energy? So discipline, as we've talked about, is not necessarily about doing more. It's just about managing your energy. So it might be going to bed 30 minutes earlier, taking a short walk instead of scrolling before you sit down to do your property hour so you feel fresh. It may be saying no to one thing that drains you so that you can say yes to something that is actually building you. Obviously, if you are permanently exhausted, discipline will always feel like you're dragging yourself uphill. So I hope you've noticed that none of these are extreme. They're small, but small disciplines repeated becomes your identity. So let's go deep dive more into that. So the identity of becoming a disciplined person. And this is about who you believe you are. So if you deep down think, oh, I'm just not a disciplined person, you're going to subconsciously sabotage yourself and prove yourself right, basically. You'll start a habit, you'll drop it and say, oh, here we go again. I knew I couldn't stick to anything. If you're ready to take your property journey to the next level, check out my Property Success Mindset Formula. It's a course on Udemy, and inside you'll discover actionable strategies and exercises designed to shift your thinking, boost your confidence, and help you navigate property challenges with clarity. Whether you're just starting out or looking to break through to a new level, this course delivers the mindset tools professional investors use every day. Visit the link in the show notes to unlock your property potential. Your biggest asset is not just your portfolio, but the way you think. But let's try to think differently, try to identify differently. Instead of saying, I'm bad at discipline, try, I'm becoming a more disciplined person, or even I'm the kind of person who keeps small promises to myself. And I think that kind of terminology, when you talk about small promises and keeping promises to yourself, that is really key. That is such an ingrained thing since we were children, pinky promise. If we start keeping those small promises to ourselves, the psychology, this is going to be huge. There's this idea that our brain, it really likes consistency between our identity and our actions. So if you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, even on tiny things, your behavior starts to align with that. So let's think about this in your property journey. If you're saying, I'm the sort of investor who always runs the numbers properly. I'm the landlord who calls tenants back when I say I will. I'm the person who sits down once a week to look at my portfolio, even if it's just one property. So a great book is Make Your Bed by Admiral William McRaven. And if you haven't also seen his speech on YouTube, oh my gosh, in fact, I'm going to go and watch it after this. It is so powerful. Please, please, please look it up. Make Your Bed by Admiral William McRaven. He talks about starting your day with one small completed task, and that's making your bed. Not because your bed matters, but because your brain gets used to finish what I start. And even now, because I wasn't a big bed maker, I've literally just got a duvet and I wasn't that bothered. But now, over the years, I make it look nice. I've got pillows on there, I've got covers. And that to me, I feel like I've achieved something, the first thing of the day. So it might literally be your bed, or it might be other things that you're incorporating. I always do my 20-minute property block when I said I would. So small acts of discipline become a vote for the identity that you want. And really key, discipline needs to feel kind, not cruel. So let's be really clear here. Discipline is not about beating yourself up. Real discipline has compassion built into it. It understands that you are human, that life happens, that we do have weeks where we go off track. But here's the important bit. Disciplined people are not the ones who never slip. They're actually the ones who do slip, but they get back on track quickly without any drama. So instead of, I missed my Sunday session, I'm useless, what's the point? They would say something like, okay, that week went off plan. What tiny action can I take today to get back into that motion? There's a psychologist called Kristin Neff, and talks a lot about self-compassion, speaking to yourself with the same kindness you'd use with a friend. And this is so key. Like, if you wouldn't speak to your friend, your grandma, or your kids, don't speak to yourself like that. And if you combine that kindness with discipline, you get something really powerful. You hold yourself to a standard. You don't blame yourself when you fall short. And, so in practice, this might look like planning your week, but leaving some breathing space. It might be setting realistic goals for your current season of life and not comparing yourself to someone perhaps with no kids or no job or different resources. Um, it might look like saying, what's the next best step, instead of I have to fix everything today. So, in property, this might be you wanted to analyze 10 deals this week, but you only managed 3. So instead of giving up, celebrate those 3 and recommit for the next week. It might be that you plan to attend a networking event and then your childcare fell through. So perhaps you can watch the replay, or you could message a new contact that you've found online, or go and meet someone for coffee. So discipline plus self-compassion keeps you in the game long enough to see results. So let's tie this directly back to property. So whatever strategy you're using, I mean, it could be basic buy to let, HMOs, buy, refurbish, refinance, flips, or something creative, assisted sales, purchase, lease option. So many different strategies. Discipline will show up in a few simple ways. So you actually sit down, run the numbers instead of guessing. You keep learning, but you don't hide behind endless education. You manage your money proactively, even if your portfolio is small. And you look after your energy so you don't make big decisions from a burnt out state. So there's a beautiful line from a real estate commentator that I read recently. It said, most people assess the risk of investing. Very few assess the risk of doing nothing. So when you avoid discipline because it feels hard, you're exposing yourself to really a different risk. Waking up in 5-10 years and realizing that not really much has changed. And let's be fair, we don't want that for ourselves. So I really want you to be able to look back and say, I wasn't perfect, but I was consistent. I took small steps. I kept showing up. And that is what builds a portfolio. That's what changes your life. So what is your one discipline for the next 30 days? So we ensure we get theory into action, please pick one discipline for the next 30 days, just one. And you really need to make it small, specific, and realistic in your current life and whatever it throws at you. So we've already mentioned it might be, 20 minutes to an hour on the Sunday to look at property deals or your portfolio. Routine money dates, checking your accounts, your savings. It might be a rule that you always sleep on a big property decision before saying yes. It may be a daily habit of reading 5 to 10 pages of a book that builds your mindset and your skill. And it's really key to write it down as an identity statement. So I'm the kind of person who ... So it might be, I'm the kind of person who sits down every Sunday and does this, that, and the other with my property. I'm the kind of person who checks my bank accounts every Friday and knows where my money is going. And once you've written this down, put it somewhere where you're going to see it. It might be on your fridge, on your mirror, in your phone wallet, in a notebook. And every time you follow through with this, notice how it feels. That really quiet satisfaction, that discipline, and that feeling is what we want to wire your nervous system. It really is building that identity of who you are, and it'll be keeping those promises that you've made to yourself. So thank you so much. Please go ahead and, make that small discipline. And if this kind of conversation about discipline has lifted some of that heaviness and helped you to see it as self-respect rather than self-punishment, I'd love you to share this episode with someone who needs this message, perhaps a fellow investor, a friend, a partner. And remember, you don't need to become a different person overnight. You just need to start keeping small promises to yourself consistently. And property isn't just about what you buy, it's about who you become in the process. So, as always, your mindset is your greatest property. Keep building it.